Yes, and you're waking up with Damo here on 4WK. It is time to do our History Out There segment. And, of course, we love to take a look at local history. And on the line this morning, we have the one and the only Harold Peacock. How are you, mate?
Good morning, Damo. I'm very warm compared to you in Toowoomba, I believe.
Yes, where are you, up in Cairns or...?
No, look, I'm back down in the southeast in Brisbane today, but I've been researching on the ground and on sites and in depth up to Toowoomba, in Cairns, and I think I've got a connection with Toowoomba which you'll find interesting.
Well, this was all about a railway guard who wanted to come to Toowoomba some 130 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. Look, it's only a minor connection to Toowoomba, but the story is so good, I just have to tell you about it.
All right, mate. Away you go.
Yeah, look, on the esplanade in Cairns, there's an old 5-inch colonial coastal defence gun that the Queensland colonial government sent to Cairns in 1889. The closest the gun ever came to seeing action was a result of rivalry between the Cairns Naval Brigade and the Cairns Artillery Volunteer Corps. They both wanted the gun. They were keen for a fight, so when the chance came, they jumped to it. Now, one man there was gunner William James Undy. Now, when King George V visited, Undy represented the Cairns Defence Services at the ceremony, but his normal job was a railway guard with the Queensland Railways, and he applied for a similar position in Toowoomba, but was knocked back, and so he was stuck in Cairns for this historic battle. And there was also naval instructor William Mudford. Now, Mudford had served in the Royal Navy, there's a British Royal Navy, since 1872, and had served aboard Nelson's famous flagship Victory, and around the world in Turkey, Russia, Philippines, and in East India, posting with the suppression of the slave trade. He came to Queensland as chief gunner and founded the Naval Cadet movement in the colony. Now, there was a drill night at the Lilybank homestead at Stratford, which today is a suburb of Cairns. The trouble brewing between the Cairns Naval Brigade and the Cairns Artillery Volunteer Corps was exacerbated by the generosity of Cairns business people who supplied, or rather oversupplied, the free beer. Now, one of those donors was probably the owner of Lilybank, Alexander Draper, who would be mayor of Cairns 5 times. Now, it was decided after dinner to conduct a sham fight, and so the Naval Brigade took up the position on the ridge above Lilybank. They had to be dislodged by the Artillery Volunteer Corps. Now, the officer of the attacking forces made the men so tired by repeated orders to retire that some of them decided to have a war on their own. Now, when the next order came to retreat, the captain stood dismayed to see them steadily going in the wrong direction. He kept whistling the retreat, but his men kept advancing. Now, when approaching the ridge, the attackers were startled to see the Naval Brigade forces advancing down the slope with fixed bayonets. Realising what was happening, the men of the artillery battery decided to fix bayonets too. Now, leading the Naval Brigade was Instructor Mudford, who was waving a Navy cutlass. The first man he met was Gunner Martin. He parried the thrust with the loss of some skin on his fingers. He threw down his rifle and punched the instructor down. The instructor got up and continued. He then met Gunner James and thrust his cutlass at him. The gunner parried, but not quickly enough because the point of the instructor's cutlass actually caught him under the eye.
Wow.
Now, behind Gunner James was Gunner Rotz, whose rifle was loaded with blank cartridge. Now, Rotz levelled his rifle on the shoulder of Gunner James, took aim, and shot Instructor Mudford in the face at point-blank range. Now, poor Mudford was knocked out. He went white as a ghost, and the powder was actually embedded and marked his face for the rest of his life. The feud continued until the attacker's Lieutenant Sturt arrived, frantically waving his sword and calling his men to rally around him. By this time, there were people rushing from everywhere to be in the fight. The combatants were eventually got under control, and the battery marched one way and the brigade the other. Now, subsequently, Inspector Mudford identified our Toowoomba's wannabe gunner Undy as the man who shot him. Now, Undy was court-martialed by Colonel George French, who was the commander of the Queensland Defence Force, and he was ordered to be drummed out of the company. But then Gunner Rotz stepped forward and admitted his guilt. Instructor Mudford was awarded £50 damages, And Gunner William Undy, you remember he wanted to be in Toowoomba all along, he was saved from disgrace. Now, his son, Corporal William Undy, served Australia in the First World War, and another son, Warrant Officer Arthur Undy, served in the Second World War. So, in the end, our Undys held up under pressure and performed well.
Well, there you go. A lot of undies there, that's for sure. And a lot of gunners. Made another great story and lots of fun as well on the way. I tell you what, they bred them differently back in those days, didn't they?
Oh, they bred them tough, and when there's a gun at stake, they all want to have control of that. But you can actually see that gun up on the esplanade in Cairns, and it's got that little Toowoomba connection.
Oh, there you go. Is that the gun that I've got a picture of?
It is indeed.
There you go. So you can jump onto the 4WK Facebook page and have a look at the exact gun there, and you'll be able to, think about your undies.
That's right.
There you go. Oh, mate, another great story. And, of course, you'll be putting this up on historyouthere.com so people can have a read.
That's right. Tomorrow morning, typically, it's historyouthere.com, and you can read this story and all the others as well.
All right, mate. Appreciate it. As always, another great story. And we'll look forward to catching up again next week.
Absolutely. You just try and stop me, Damo.
There we go. Harold Peacock, and you can check out that story and many others by jumping onto historyouthere.com. We'll take a break. Back with more in a moment.